Hello, everybody. Welcome to a post-practice report edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on all the places, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all at Hawk Blogger. And if you haven't followed us over on Instagram or TikTok, do it right now. We'd appreciate it. We got a bunch of content showing up there each and every day, and it's a great way to stay in touch with what we're doing and help the community grow. So help us out there. Plus, it gives advertisers more to be excited about and come and help support this entity that we are building here together. And today's kind of a special day because this could be the final post-practice report edition of this show. Not because anything's happening with me, but we're at that time of the training camp schedule where the public practices are over, and we'll see whether or not there are more media availability practices the rest of the way. It starts to become at least a question mark from here on out. They will be going to Green Bay for joint practices. I won't. I made the decision. I'm going to spend some time with the family, not going to take on the expense of the travel or the logistical challenges of getting to Green Bay, and we'll just pass on those practices. So we will see. I don't know for sure this is the final report. It might be, and that's part of why I wanted to take a moment to give you guys some observations from today, as well as some stuff that stuck out to me overall. And you might be wondering where I am. If you missed my show this morning, today is family day at the VMAC, which means not only the players and the coaches have, sometimes their families here, but all of the people that work at the VMAC, people that work at the stadium, there's tons of family and friends that come out for this. So, we don't shoot outside during that. Obviously, we don't want to get a bunch of those folks in it. And also it's set up to be a picnic for all those people. So there's not really a good place to shoot it anyway. So I'm inside. This is what I call the interrogation room in the VMAC. We'll see if I make it out of here, but apologies for kind of the drab background and the lighting, but this is what I have to work with. And really, who cares what it looks like as long as you can hear what happened. So let's get to it today. Admittedly, I did not take as detailed of notes today, so I won't go through every single rep of 1v1s and stuff like that. It was a non-padded practice, but it was a pretty physical practice. I think there were more either fights or close to fights in this practice than any practice so far this training camp. I think I counted at least 4, and depending on your definition, it could have been more. So, I'm not going to give you the play-by-play on each one of those situations. I'll get a little bit into it with the 1v1s, but suffice to say, I think the guys are ready to start practicing against other people. I think they're getting to the point where they're ready for the season to start because they're just, I think they were kind of just sick of each other a little bit. Nothing terrible, nothing super, out of bounds, but just short-tempered and kind of tired of the same old what. Now, a couple things that did stand out besides the physical stuff, and I'll get to that in a second. There are a few injuries in this practice. I'm not allowed to share injury details. And I think Mike McDonald mentioned a couple things in his press conference I can speak to. Jalen Gaines, the undrafted free agent defensive end, the edge that I've talked about as having a good camp, did leave the field. And Mike McDonald said he's going to get imaging on his hand. From what I could see, it did not look good. So hoping that turns out to be okay. We'll find out. But that was one. There was another couple of guys, and again, I'm not going to share specifics on who that were out for a little bit. I even saw ice, on body parts, and then they were back in. And I asked Mike McDonald kind of, how do you handle that? Because I admit, as someone who cares about this team winning, not just covering them, but I'm, a fan, as you know. I don't want any of their key guys to get hurt. And if they got ice, I'm kind of like, well, just take it easy for the day. But this team, this coach, this building are trying to set a culture of toughness and reliability. And so I asked him, how do you make that decision of how much is it up to the player to decide whether or not that they can return? How much is it up to the training staff to decide? And Mike Macdonald said, that's a great question. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just telling you that I think it's a question that they've asked themselves quite a bit, because Mike Macdonald's into sports science. He pays attention to the studies. He knows what's best for them physically, generally. He also knows that football is a game of 100% injury rate, and you're going to need guys that can play through some of those bumps. And so in this case, these guys came back. They were cleared to come back, according to Mike Macdonald, and they chose to. And I think that that's something that's meaningful to the teammates that they play with and play for. I think that it's a throwback to days gone by for NFL teams where guys would, Ronnie Lott would cut a finger off and just keep playing, I'm not saying it was anything to that degree. But if you think about the Seahawks teams that were really, really meaningful, especially the last LOB team, people would come here and they would marvel at how intense the practices were, how physical the practices were, and how tough the team was. And I think just little things like that, where you've got guys that are nicked up and then choosing to come back and go to battle again, I think that matters. I think it matters. I don't think it's like the only team in the NFL that has that going on, or that they're special somehow. But it was of note to me, and I think it's of note to the coaches too. A few other things just off the top. Speaking of off the top, how people are like, Clint Kubiak just yesterday was saying, well, Mike's done a really good job of keeping the cover on the defense, on the offense, so we can't really go deep. That's part of why MVS hasn't had a big camp, because of the coverages Mike's been calling. Well, guess who went over the top today? Torrey Horton Jr. He caught probably the longest pass I've seen of training camp today against Reek Woolen. It was maybe 50 yards downfield, down the left sideline, caught it in stride. Beautiful throw from Sam Darnold. Beautiful route by Torrey Horton, and against a very good corner. So let the Torrey Horton hype train gain a little bit more steam. That was one of the first times we've seen that play this preseason, which was really cool. Elijah Arroyo had kind of an up and down day. He had a drop that I haven't seen him drop too many passes before. AJ Barner had a drop. I have not seen him drop a pass at all. And then Elijah Arroyo also caught a nice touchdown from Sam Darnold. Great throw with anticipation. Nice play from him. Great catch from Arroyo. I saw Cooper Kupp make a really nice catch in this one, where he was coming across the field. The pass was a little bit behind him, and he was able to contort his body and catch it as he was going to the ground. Impressive grab. I also saw Cooper Kupp run a nice route and was able to beat Devin Witherspoon, which was good to see, right? Like, yes, we know Devin Witherspoon's good, but we also want to know that Cooper Kupp can do that against a very good corner. So that was good to see. And that was on a blitz, where basically it was kind of a hot route, where Kupp just quickly ran like a 5-yard stick, like out route, and Darnold had the ball out perfect time before the pressure got to him and delivered right to Kupp. So that was nice to see. We did see Christian Haynes getting some reps at right guard today. So, he's still getting some opportunity there. That's the first time I've seen him there in a while. There was another big play to Torrey Horton. This one came courtesy of Drew Lock. Drew Lock had a kind of an uneven day, some of the nicer throws of the day, but then also the interceptions of the day. So he had one that was a really poor decision, where he was trying to throw it on a seam route, and like it was not there. Jamie Sheriff tipped the ball up and D'Anthony Bell almost picked it off. Before that, Nehemiah Pritchett tipped a pass from Drew Lock that did get intercepted on a diving pick from D'Anthony Bell. So, there is that. And then I think, where's the other one I've got in my notes here? Isis Waxter had a diving pick. Where was that? I know Waxter had the pick, and I think it was tipped by Jarek Reed. I actually know it was tipped by Jarek Reed. And so Waxter made a really nice diving catch on that one. So again, there it is. This was actually a Jalen Milroe pick. So it was not a Drew Luck pick, this one. That's why I missed it on my notes. Jalen Milroe was trying to throw to Tyrone Broden, and Jarek Reed jumped the route, tipped it up in the air. Waxter dove, made the pick. So nice play by Waxter there. No, remember I said this was a padless practice, but man, was it physical. Like, these guys are hitting each other. And I don't remember padless practices being this physical, even during the Pete Carroll era. Like, I just don't remember it getting this many collisions. And there was one play where George Halani was just tearing through a hole, like running full speed, and Julian Love was stepping into the spot and just got run over, like just flattened by George Halani. And, Halani wasn't trying to do any ill to Julian Love, and the defenders all kind of rushed around Julian Love to make sure he was okay and got him up. But there was a lot of plays like that where there was just a lot of physicality. I saw Gray Zabel on the ground. I saw a lot of guys on the ground, a lot of pretty physical hits happening, even without pads. Speaking of physical, so there was a play earlier on where Anthony Bradford was leading the charge on a running play, and Ernest Jones, stepped in the way. And I mean, Anthony Bradford's just a big guy. And when he runs, even when he just shoulders somebody, it reverberates. And so Ernest Jones did not get the better end of that. No injury or anything like that, but it was just another big one. And so then we get to the 1v1s, and a couple things stood out. Well, before I get into this, I got to say, so yesterday when I did my quick post-practice report and I talked about how well the defenders played and how well they did in the 1v1, 2v2 pass rush drill, I kept seeing all these comments of, oh yeah, but they did that against the second and the third string offensive line. Guys, it's the same groups going against the same groups every day, and they've done it for weeks now. So when I'm telling you that they had a standout day, it's because it's different than every other day. So unless you're saying that every other day the offensive linemen were not good and the defensive linemen were not good because the offense was winning a lot of those reps, then I don't know what to tell you. But yesterday, the defensive line had a fantastic day, especially the young guys, and they whooped up on the offensive line. Yes, it was second and third string in most cases, but that's who they go against. So it mattered. It stood out. And this was a much more back and forth day, but man, was it heated. So the intensity in this drill today was super high, especially again, padless practice. So I got there a little bit late for this. It was 1v1s today, not 2v2s, like games and twists and stuff like that. Connor O'Toole, number 57, is really coming on strong. So he was injured early in practice, not this practice, but early in training camp. He's been back a little while. He seems like he's now up to full speed, and he blew around Amari Kite, the left tackle, on one of the plays I saw, just really easily. The next play, Kite did a little bit better because O'Toole tried to bull rush him. Kite was able to anchor a little bit more. Jared Ivey, who was one of the stars, if not the star of the show yesterday, went up against Atawa Lamea. He absolutely stoned him. Ivey did not get 2 steps past the line of scrimmage. They go the second time. Lamea does it again. And there was a number of these moments where the guys are like, they're each grabbing each other's jersey as they're blocking, and the play's over and no one's letting go, and they're still going at it. Those are when the fights usually break out. This was the start of what was almost like, it didn't turn into something, but the guys from both sides, the offensive line, defense line, started coming, then they separated and they were all right. Well, next play, Bubba Thomas just absolutely puts Federico Merenges, the center, on skates. I mean, it literally looked like he was on ice, just whoosh, like pushed him directly back to the quarterback like that. Defense was hooting and hollering, super excited about it. Next play, Merenges wins the rep against the same guy, and Gray Zabel raises his arms and is like trying to put it back at, making sure the defense knows that the offensive line won that rep. Next comes in Mason Richmond, and he's playing, I think, right guard on this rep. He goes against J.R. Singleton, and Richmond holds his own. Singleton's a physical, kind of explosive guy. He holds his own. They go for the second rep. This and again, there was the first rep, they were holding on a little long, and you could tell it was getting heated. Then the second rep, Singleton just comes with everything he's got. Richmond holds up pretty well, to be honest. He was able to kind of hold up, but it kept going, turned into a full-on fight. Both sides, like Singleton actually got ejected, not like referee ejected. He got ejected from the scrum. And so he was kind of watching, but he was, talking and yelling, and everybody, nothing like punches weren't thrown as far as I could see. It was just like guys got together and yelling at each other, whatever, and pushing and shoving. Then they separate. And then they had Mike Jarrell taking some snaps at right tackle, and he went against Mike Morris. First rep, Mike Jarrell wins, does well there. Then the next rep, Mike Morris wins, gets around him. Then it was back to Connor O'Toole. This time he's going against Luke Felix Fualalo. Connor O'Toole just blows right by him, like he wasn't there. Next rep, Luke Felix does better. Then Anthony Campbell, number 93, a guy that I'm starting to like. I was enamored with Anthony Campbell when they first brought him into rookie minicamp because he's 6'7". He looks like an NFL player. He just looks like an athlete. He hadn't done that much up until now, but the last 2 days of practice, he has been a handful in these pass rush drills. And he went up against Bryce Cabledew and just drove him back. Almost immediately, like, turned into another fight. They went again. Cabledew did better this time. So that's where it ended. But a lot of back and forth in that 1v1 drill, as I think is always what you want to see, a little bit of both. From there, let me just see if there's any other. Jake Bobo had a couple catches. Tyrone Broden had some nice catches. Let's see. There was one play. So they do these ACT they do a whole ACT practice, but they usually do this one part of practice where they'll cycle it back down where no one's going full speed, but they kind of run through the plays. And there was a play where it went deep to, I think it was Broden, and a safety was not in the right spot. And one of the coaches, I'm not going to tell you all the details. I'm not allowed to tell you the quotes, but was like, we can't have the safety not doing XYZ. I'm just going to leave it general like that. And basically, like, who's playing X? And the person raised their hand and they got coached right there. And, and so it was, the reason I'm bringing this up was a lot of people probably think those moments in practice are not that meaningful because they're not going full speed. The defenders are not really trying to break up the pass. The defenders are not trying to get to the quarterback. It's really just going through the motion of the play. But for the coaches, like, that's an exact example of why they do that, because it's hard to coach that at full speed. You pull the guy off the field after the rep and you talk to him, but in that moment, you can say exactly at the time where the mistake was made, make the correction, make sure that they hear it, make sure they know it, and move on. So, good example of part of why Mike Macdonald does that. Waxter had another nice breakup toward the end of practice, and then the practice ended with Cody White catching a touchdown. And Devin Witherspoon can't help himself, saying, I can't say quote, so I won't say exactly what he said, but basically implying that it wouldn't have happened if it was a real game because the pressure would have turned into a sack. So, Jake Bobo is probably the guy that talks the most on the offensive side. Spoon definitely is the guy that talks the most on the defensive side. And it was a spirited practice from what I saw. And that kind of leads to one of my observations, just wrapping up, training camp to this point. I'll obviously have a lot more to share as we go along, but this has been as physical of a training camp as I can remember the Seahawks having. Certainly more physical than last year. Significantly more time dedicated to running the football. A higher percentage of the plays in practice are running plays than I remember for a long time. Certainly the tight ends are getting involved a lot more than they have in the past. The fullback, which we've already talked about, hasn't even been really a part of the offense for the last few years, is going to be a meaningful part of what we're seeing with this particular Seahawks team. The camaraderie, the tightness between this team, the chemistry seems really solid and promising. If you're trying to build, anyone that's built a team, it's not just how talented that team is and what their skills are, but how well do they work together? And this looks like a team that has the potential to be better than most in that regard. And the coaching staff just seems so much more in command of what they're doing than a year ago. Not that last year was some kind of chaotic mess, but there's an ease. There's just a comfort that I see with how they're approaching it that's different. And some of that comes from Mike Macdonald being in his second year. Some of that comes from the coaching staff that has been here, being here in a second year. Some of it comes from Clint Kubiak and his offensive staff that has been together for many years with John Benton and Rick Dennison and, Andrew Janocko and those guys. So there's just this feeling of whatever this team, their potential is, I would say there's a feeling that there are higher potential chance to reach that than maybe last year's team. Last year's team was probably a high variance team where if everything worked out, they'd be super good. If it didn't, it could be really bad. I don't know how high variance this team is. I think the floor is relatively high. The question with this team has always been, how high is the ceiling? And that's what we will find out once the regular season begins. And once things start to really be tested by opposing teams and opposing coordinators. So, those are kind of some high-level observations. I got to wrap up soon because I got to get home. I got to wrap all this stuff up and bike home to get ready for Real Hawk Talk. Dana O'Gorman and Nathan Ernst will be with me at 6:00 Pacific time. I appreciate everybody who has followed along. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the coverage that I've been able to provide. Hopefully I'll be able to provide more of this depending on what's going on with future practices. But if this is the last time this season that I'll be able to give you a practice report, it's been great. Appreciative to the Seahawks for giving me the access that they have and giving me tables so I could sit down with guys and actually have longer, more relaxed discussions. If you missed my show this morning, Hawk Blogger Mornings, when I talked to Eric Saubert, please check that out. I thought there was a lot of great stuff from Eric in there. My interview with Tyrone Broden yesterday is up, available for that. The Reek Woolen conversation is up and available. A lot of good stuff, I think, has come out of these discussions, and hopefully you guys have all enjoyed it. If you have, make sure you give the show a like, click subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those places. Would greatly appreciate that. And a follow on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. All right, everybody, that will do it. I got to head home. Hopefully, I will see you at 6 o'clock for Real Hawk Talk. Until then, I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been your post-practice report.